Welcome to Ecologic for the month of May. We're fortunate to have with us Greg Romero, who's been very active he's the director of the port, or I guess, it- you know, I've worked with him when he was in the Senate, worked with him when he was parish president of Iberia Parish. And tell me some of your other jobs, Greg.
Well, during the time I was in the legislature, I worked for Frank's
Yeah.
International. So that was my real job, like my children said, not the
Yeah.
political job.
So tell us about the history of the port, when it started, why it started. It was, of course, just to meet, mainly to serve the oil industry, but that has changed. I understand you all have 35 Mexican lift barges.
We've been lucky. The legislature created the port through an act of the legislature back in the 1940s and says this will be the port of Iberia upon the request of city and parish officials in Iberia Parish. So through that act, the port was created as a standalone body. We are a creature of the state, if you will, and it's worked well. And way back then, the city of New Iberia had owned land at the Port of Iberia, about 147 acres, of which they went ahead and signed to the Port of Iberia Authority at that time a 50-year lease that would cost $1 a year, in hopes that the Port Commission that was created through this act would do things that would create job opportunities in Iberia Parish and throughout Acadiana, really, not knowing what the future held, but they thought that if they had a port right in up to New Iberia, it would help the economic situation of everybody, and it has. We've been very lucky through the
Yeah.
years, a lot of help.
And it has, benefited people in Acadiana. I was real friendly with Country Harris, and he built apartments all over the place. And he did a marketing survey of the port. At the time, you had 5,000 employees. 65% of them lived in Lafayette Parish.
That's what I understand. That's what I understand. And the
So
port is,
what's the Lafayette Chamber done to help you?
well, they've done a lot. I interact with Lafayette a lot. I interact with Lita, Miss Mandy Mitchell, and before her. They've been very active, and we needed support. That's why the channel that is being completed now, Acadiana to the Gulf of Mexico, better known as AgMac, is being dug now, and it's referred to as Acadiana to the Gulf of Mexico Access Channel. And it really, through the
Who's your engineer?
engineer is the GIS Engineering out of Houma.
Yeah.
Is the engineer that's pretty much designed and secured the permits for the cleaning of the canal. But we're finishing about a 5-year project, spending $126 million to dredge the port access channel direct to the Gulf through Freshwater Bayou down the Intracoastal Canal. And we're digging to a depth of 16 feet. And just in the last 5 years since we started, we've secured at least a half dozen new leases for tenants that needed that extra water, because the Port of Iberia is a shallow draft port. It's commonly referred to as a barge port. So we've got to be very selective in who we can go after. But the jobs that are coming with these new tenants are really good. We're excited, and we can talk about that in a minute, Mr. Harrell.
Yeah. Over the years, you were mainly supporting the oil industry.
That's correct. Over the last 40 years, the Port of Iberia was on the map because in the Gulf of Mexico, which is referred to as the shelf, there's probably over 15,000 platforms and jackets that were installed on the shelf in the Gulf of Mexico. And I'd say 40% of those jackets and platforms were fabricated at the Port of Iberia. So the Port of Iberia is a heavy fabrication port. And like you said a while ago, had over 5,000 jobs once upon a time and over 100 businesses at the port in its heyday. But now, in the last 10, 15 years, we've had to rethink that, because now with the shelf in the Gulf of Mexico slowing down, production is not what it used to be. Probably 10,000 of those 15,000 structures that were installed over the last 40 years have been removed through the federal plug and abandonment program that the
Yeah.
federal government requires producers. If you have a platform and it's not producing within 2 years, you've got to submit a plan to plug and abandon that location
Yeah.
to the satisfaction of the federal government. But the port had a big play in that build out on the shelf.
And it's like a dentist pulling your tooth. You'll never make a dime. When you take a platform out, your days of working on that platform are over.
That's right. That's right. The industry on the shelf has subsided a lot. The play is in deeper water, and especially in the Gulf of Mexico. Look what's going on with the big.
Deeper in, what was that, the Royalty Relief Act of '95, sponsored by Bennett Johnson. They pay no royalty on the oil that's deeper than 800 feet.
That's what I understand. It was created way before our time,
Yeah, yeah,
way before my time for sure.
right, yeah.
But you've got to incentivize now the activity in the inland waters and on land in the state as well as throughout the country, but especially in Louisiana, has subsided substantially. They've got a lot of activity out there. They just had a big case down in Plaquemine Parish. You probably followed against
Oh,
Chevron, and on the inland water side, we had a company named Parker Drilling at the Port of Iberia. 15 years ago, there were probably 20 posted drilling barges working out of the Port of Iberia, and their yard was and the office was at the Port of Iberia. It had over 700 employees working on those 20 drilling barges. Today, that's non-existent. They are all gone. The company has been bought by Neighbors Drilling, and they're going to sell off the barge rigs. Nobody's going to drill a well in the inland bays of Louisiana, inland waters of Louisiana, with the advent of the lawsuits that have been filed.
That's right, yeah.
They're suing us out of business, if you will.
Well, that's I'm real familiar with why we're losing the marsh and our fisheries. They have 55,000 significant dams around the world. 48,000 are in the continental U.S. The Missouri has 17,000 dams.
Wow.
We went to the Fort Kent Dam last July, and the top of the dam is 550 feet. From the top of the dam to the what we would call the end of the lake is 189 miles.
Wow.
It covers 265,000 acres. And the material that would normally come to build our area, our coastal area, has to come down those rivers. And of course, I think they have 6 major dams. Some of the biggest impoundments on earth are on the Missouri. And the Fort Kent Dam is one of them. But the runoff, the detritus material, shrimp and oysters and clams and all of that, they eat decaying vegetation called the detritus material. Got 265,000 acres that won't produce any detritus material. And they want to blame what's happening to our shrimping industry. In 1985, we sold 38,700 shrimping licenses in Louisiana, commercial. These are vessel licenses. 10 years later, 1995, we sold 10,200.
Wow.
So, I mean, you can imagine if you had cane farmers or anybody like that, you lost what is that percentage that you lost 70% in 10 years? And it's a basic economic resource, I mean, it's the farmers and the shrimpers and all these guys that, bring value to. Shrimp have no value in the ocean or the bays. But when they land in a boat, they all of a sudden have value. And same for sugarcane. And, so you can't blame the oil companies for the lack of material and water. Sarah and I, with the aid of David right there, went up to St. Louis, and in a 17-foot flat, we came down all the way to Butler Road.
Wow, that's
4
a long
days.
ride. Long ride.
Yeah, 900 miles.
You wonder about the shrimp industry. In 1986, when I was parish president, Mr. Harrell, I took it upon myself. I wanted to go to I'd read a lot about the Boston Seafood Show.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me go to it. I went by myself. I spent a week over there just to walk around and see what it's all about, to
Yes.
understand a little bit about the shrimp business, because everybody was complaining about foreign competition. Well, at that event, the purchasing officer, the head purchasing guy for General Mills, which is the Olive Garden and a bunch of the restaurant chains, he was the guest speaker at one of the seminars. So I went in, and he spoke, and he showed some slides that showed over 90%. This is in 1986. Over 90% of the shrimp consumed in the United States was imported shrimp.
Right. And they grown.
And I'm thinking to myself, Delcom, you're not even on the map.
Right.
And yet you had people there from Pakistan, you name it. It was unbelievable. That is the worldwide seafood show. But I learned a lot at that event. But it started way back then. And as pond-raised shrimp was coming from Thailand and Vietnam.
In a 7-acre pond, I think that's 2 hectares. 10 foot deep, they raise 1 million pounds of shrimp a year.
Wow. Well, I introduced the first bill in the legislature to try to get restaurants to put country of origin labeling on their menus.
They're still fighting.
Oh, the biggest opponents at the witness table in the Louisiana Senate was Piccadilly and Drago's. They were the two that came and spoke against the bill. They didn't want to be told. They didn't want people to know where they got their seafood. Piccadilly was 100% Chinese even back then. And that was in the 90s, early 90s. And I think Drago just had it. We don't serve shrimp, but we don't want to be told to put on and you're not going to bring oysters in from a foreign destination. So I don't know why that happened, because since then, I mean, he and I are very good friends. They run a real good shop. But you never know.
So tell us about some of the improvements that have come to the port. And you have 1,500 acres, and you all have 15 acres that are not being leased. So that's a hell of a success story.
Yeah, we've been buying some land in the last 4 to 5 years, in 80 and 100 acre parcels, land that's at the port that landowner either just wanted to part with it, or whatever reason. The bank took possession of one, the old McDermott facility, and we've repurposed that. We've been very fortunate through a program through the state of Louisiana, what they call the Port Priority Program. We've been able to, where they'll reimburse us for 90% of our expense if we can create jobs. We can tie it to job creation. So we've got to submit a proposal to them. So in the last 10 years, we've been able to get 4 or 5 people to come in and take advantage of that program. One of which is a company, Global Risers, out of Cape Town, South Africa.
Wow.
They've come in and they have 6 locations throughout the world.
And they build cranes.
This company works on deep water drilling risers. I'll get to the crane company. They're from Cape Town, South Africa, and they've taken 90 acres for 30 years, and they're asking us to build, through that program with the state of Louisiana, like a $10 million shop on that property. It has shops on it, but they're going to expand that operation. And they're out of Cape Town, South Africa. They're establishing a foreign trade zone for the product, because heretofore risers were brought into the port of Fouchon by deep water vessels, and they'd offload in Fouchon. You might have 300 or 400 risers that are 90 feet long, and they weigh like 80,000 pounds per riser. You can only put 1 riser per truck on a stretch trailer, and you have to have an escort behind every truck. And you do that times 300 times the money, and then they decided to come to the Port of Iberia with the digging of our channel. They can come into the Port of Iberia with a vessel 275 or close to 300 feet long. They're not fully loaded, but they'll come in and they can offload maybe a half a load of riser and save a lot of money by not running truck individually for each riser. And we've been very fortunate. They've decided to come here. One company at the port that also took advantage of that is a company called Seadrill. They have drilling, deep water drill ships on every continent on Earth. They're really big, and this is a worldwide shore base. They've established on 60 acres. It is a foreign trade zone. They saw that as soon as they got in about 4 years ago, and today they store their rig components in this 60 acres, and that all kind of machine shop work comes as a result of it. A lot of people come into their yard to work on their equipment to test it, and they do it all on location. And this company has a few thousand employees throughout the world, but because this is a shore base, it's like a parts warehouse. If a rig component breaks anywhere on Earth, they'll call it out of inventory here, put it on a ship or one of these super large cargo planes, and they'll ship it to wherever the part is needed. But it's an amazing operation. They probably spend $300 million a year running this parts warehouse, if you will. So it's an amazing thing. And they were based out of Aberdeen, Scotland when they signed the lease.
Wow.
And the other company that you spoke of a while ago is E-Cranes, which is a company out of Poland, which is another international company. They manufacture electric cranes in Poland, at a factory in Poland.
What's the lifting capacity?
The one that they put together in December of last year and had to deliver to a company on the Mississippi River called Cooper Consolidated, which unloads these ocean-going grain barges, iron ore, you name it. The capacity of that crane was 60 cubic yards, a clam bucket that can hold 60 cubic yards. Wow. That's a tremendous amount of volume. So and they have another one just like it that they'll be finished by the middle of the summer. They call it an electric crane 4000 is the model, and it'll be on display. They plan to have a big expo day, a show and tell, if you will, whenever they finish putting it together. They want everybody to see it. We're going to try to get the governor to come and actuate the machine and get some television footage to show the world what we're doing at the Port of Iberia. And this is their Western Hemisphere assembly facility. They sell a lot of these. If you Google E-Crane, you're going to see they have locations throughout the world. And this is going to be the main location for the Western Hemisphere, wow, which is good for us.
Don't you have a picture of?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a picture of their yard, if you will. They're going to... The two buildings with the red roofs are going to be their fabrication and their parts warehouse. And at the top of the picture, right under the name, you're going to see a crane on a barge with a white pedestal. That is what they build. And the other one is on tracks in the yard. They build them for scrap yards on tracks, so they'll build it on a specially made barge with a big post that goes down to the middle of the barge. And again, like the one that was built for Cooper Consolidated, it can withstand a lot of weight. It has a big counterweight on the back. And again, it's the largest crane in the Northern Hemisphere.
Wow.
And the other one I want to show you, we just signed a lease and had an announcement a couple of months ago for a company out of Baton Rouge called Cajun Industries. Cajun Industries has signed a lease for 75 acres, and this is going to be their fabrication yard.
That's a 30-year lease?
A 30-year lease. They've got increments. They've got a 10-year initial term. Cajun Industries will spend about close to $7 million on this site before September of this year. They're going to employ 650 people on this site. This will be new jobs created as a result of this lease. Wow. And this is a tremendous company, and they're going to build modules. This is a world-class modular fabrication facility, and it's green. As you see it in this picture is what it's going to look like in September. Right now, it's green grass, if you can imagine. That's how fast they're going to move. Just across the street from this business is another major employer out of Baton Rouge, Turner Industries. Turner Industries has a fabrication yard building modules as well, and they came to us about 3 years ago. And again, these two companies are tremendous from a marketing standpoint for the Port of Iberia, and we're excited to have both of them. Turner Industries has over 20,000 employees, wow, and it's privately owned. Cajun Industries as well, and it's just two tremendous companies.
I can't buy stock in it.
No, I can give you a hat that says Cajun Industries or a koozie. That's about as much stock as we can get. But we're just so excited about both of them because for both of them to come and locate at the Port of Iberia is tremendous. And the deepening of our channel is what's got everyone's interest. From sea drill with the deep water drill ships to global risers from Cape Town, South Africa, to E-Crane out of Belgium, building the cranes. And on and on. We've got some really good companies that have come to the port in the last 6 or 7 years, all because the channel is being deepened to the Gulf of Mexico. And that's $126 million that was secured from the state of Louisiana through the efforts of Senator Page Cortez, who was president of the Senate, Senator Brett Arland, Robert's father, but Brett helped us in the Senate side, and Representative Stuart Bishop was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. He got us, he's the one, that's where the money has to start. And Representative Bishop put that $126 million in the budget, and we didn't look back. It will be completed June 10th, next month. The last of the 57-mile segment will be completed, but just north of the freshwater Bayou Locks.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a ceremony within the next couple of weeks. We're going to go out there with the local television stations to try to get some footage while the dredge is still in operation, because we've got some work to do on the bypass as well. This past week, we went to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in New Orleans and sought their assistance on some permit expansions on what we need to do to dig some slip areas deeper and to rework the bypass. Yeah. And the Corps of Engineers were very receptive to what we asked of them. And they said within 3 weeks, we'll have those approvals. So nothing's going to stop. We've had to lower over 20 pipelines in the process. And we've had a lot of help from the pipeline companies, Shell, Kinder Morgan, you name it, on and on. Boardwalk, they all helped us out a bunch.
I was at, when this bypass was dreamed up, I was at the public hearing, and some crabber says, I don't know, they were looking at how did the plan for the port was to haul it across the bay, because the locks are 85 feet wide.
That's right.
And
the barges are 100 feet now.
Yeah. Well, see, it has to be, the Panama Canal is 100 foot, so there has to be like 95.
Wow.
So,
well, yeah.
So some Cajun, crabber says, I don't know why y'all going through all that crap. You got to just build a canal around the locks. It'll only be less than a mile, and you can put a canal and save all that money, because, man, the cost of going across the bay, but there were 3,000 jobs for 2 years.
You remember that?
Yeah. And so, who looks at me, is that a crazy idea? Says, it's not as crazy as you think. Wow. Said, we would support that rather than, going across the bay. You're not gonna keep it open.
No. That was proven.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We tried that little experiment, and it silted in no time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because you got a bottom that's very fluid, and, so it's good to hear that thing will work for us again.
That's right. We have to spend
a lot of money. That idea came from a crabber in the meeting, and none of us smart boys could think of this idea.
Well, I learned something here today. I didn't know where it came from. I thought it was John Hoove's idea, but now
no, it wasn't.
I love it. I love it. Well, it worked. And look, without the bypass, that channel is useless.
That's right.
Because of that restriction, because the barges are 100 feet wide today.
Yeah.
And that's what put the Port of Iberia on the map from a fabrication standpoint, because when we were competing for that project that you just talked about, there were 158 ports, fabrication ports all over the United States that submitted proposals. It got down to the port of Seattle, Washington, and the port of Iberia.
Really?
And the final destination of the completed modules is the North Slope in Alaska. So visualize, logistically speaking, where Seattle is in regards to where North Slope in Alaska, and compare it to where South Louisiana is, Port of Iberia. We had to go down through the Panama Canal up the west coast.
Yeah.
When you got to Seattle, you were probably 90% to the North Slope.
That's right.
But we won it. We were awarded the project because we're 100% non-union.
No kidding.
Union wages, that big difference. I mean, with those logistics, think about how can that happen?
Yeah.
We overcame because we're 100% non-union. And I was parish president when that job was being performed, and we had to put no parking signs all around the Port of Iberia because the unions threatened to picket the job site.
No kidding.
Oh, it was we had to coordinate with the sheriff to make sure we had patrol units the entire time because we didn't want to disrupt this company's decision to come and locate at the port. We had to build that yard, which was 90 acres.
Cool.
And that's the yard that Turner Industries now leases. It's that same exact yard that those Alaskan modules were fabricated on.
Well, I was at the meeting that solved that problem.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to hear
It was
that.
a Cajun crabber that came up with the idea.
And that's exactly what's making that thing happen today. That's
Wow.
the heartbeat of this whole project is that bypass. And we have to spend a lot of money cleaning it up and re-dredging in the middle.
And
But
that
that's what
thing-
we went to the Corps for, to make sure we could
That
deepen it.
thing is full of speckled trout.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And
I'm gonna have to make a run. Me and I gonna have to go do an inspection, Harold. Could you handle it?
oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd have never thought of that. You got my curiosity up now.
It wasn't, I know Oob claimed credit for it, but it wasn't Oob that came up with the idea.
I don't know if he ever claimed. He was the man at there at the time, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
happened. So I was glad, and then I'm glad it's there because in today's world, I don't know how easy it would be to permit such a feat. But today it exists with 2 concrete barges, and going forward, after we do that and clean it up and fix those barges, whatever needs to be done, we're gonna look at putting a barge gate in the middle of the bypass, just like the Bubba Dove in Homer.
Yeah.
Where it's gonna be self-ballasting, and the lock master will be able to actuate it and remove those 2 concrete barges, and just be open only when the tide is right, and
Yeah.
it would cut down on the operational cost on the functioning of that bypass.
Yeah, because right now these barges sit on the
Yeah,
bottom.
they're concrete barges is what they
Yeah.
are. And you're exactly right. It's very costly to remove them.
Yeah.
But you have to add that as your price. But Cajun, for instance, wanted to be assured that that bypass could be functional for their purposes because they plan to build some big modules in that new yard that they're starting on. They're starting Monday. In fact, tomorrow is the
Who's
start.
your engineer? O'Neill Marlborough?
Yeah, GIS engineering.
Yeah.
GIS
I
engineering.
called him the other day. My son ruined his,
He told me that.
Yeah.
He told me that story. Pipeline on the rock, something on Freshwater Bayou.
Yeah.
We had that conversation.
and I mean, he gave me the name with Hillcorp,
Yeah.
and the Hillcorp verified that it was one of the flow lines that he hit. And, I mean, the channel width is 150 feet,
Yeah.
but where it is, it's 1,000 feet.
Wow. Yeah, O'Neill told me that. He said he pointed out the channels on 150, but yeah, you got to know when you're running. And a lot of those crabbers will run that bank,
Yeah.
to stay in shallow water, because especially if you have a load, you can
Yeah.
it's better, but you never know what you're going to hit when you're running that bank.
Yeah, and it was a flow line, and to Hillcorp's credit, they tracked it down, they verified it was their line
Really?
that he hit.
I didn't know that part, because all he told me was that you had
I
called him.
had an estimate of $2,500, and they sent my son the check.
Wow. Well, that's great. I'm going to have to tell O'Neill that. I don't think he knows the end result of
Well,
your call.
they were real good about it.
That's good.
So but to blame the oil companies for they played a part, but a very small part.
Yeah.
And they used I think there was one study that looked at the extraction of liquids, and that's what the whole thing was based on. Because they had an area where you had no surface alteration, because they were along a bayou that was deep enough to carry the mail,
Yeah.
and but they pumped 2 billion gallons of, barrels of liquid out of that formation. And it dropped the beneath the marsh you have 7 or 8 feet down, you have a highly water impervious clay, high density clay.
Okay.
Well, that would lower that in this one study that was lowered 8 feet. So you had tremendous marsh loss without any surface alteration.
Oh,
They
okay.
want to blame the canals.
Yeah.
But that could be solved if every gallon of liquid you take out, you put a gallon back.
I got you.
Because it was 10, for every barrel of oil, they had 10 barrels of water. So,
A lot of produced water.
yeah, produce water, yeah.
Well, I want to mention too, Mr. Howard, about getting back to the port businesses, a couple of companies that, one company that has really almost tripled its footprint at the port in the last 3 years is Chart Industries. Chart Industries builds the heat exchange in the coal boxes, the main component for the LNG plants. And they have a 5 to 7 year backlog. 2 years ago, they came to a port commission meeting and said, look, we know you have a couple of vacant buildings on about 15 acres of property. We want those buildings. We've sent engineers in, and it'll take about $5 million to retrofit those buildings for our purposes. And they said, and we mentioned to them, well, we can assign an engineer to start working with you to decide how to get the improvements made. And they said, no, you don't understand. We don't have time for that. You as a public body have to go through a public bidding process.
Yeah.
We are proposing to spend our $5 million to retrofit the buildings because we need to start fabricating immediately in the buildings, and we can work around our work.
You see, that's what Mac Wade and them were doing.
And they came to the table and they said, in addition, we'll create at least 150 new jobs if you agree to our idea. Well, that was 3 years ago. They have spent in excess of the 5 million and they created 350 more jobs. Now there are over 600 jobs at the port. And their recent notice, they've got some welders in the yard making $40 an hour at Chart.
Cool.
And it's all that alloy metal welding. It's not steel welding, it's an alloy metal because it has to withstand those ultra cold
High heat.
temperatures. You know,
Really?
those sub-zero temperatures. Cryogenic is what it is. It's heat exchangers. But they have such a backlog. They leased the property. They tripled their employment. And they have another 5 to 7 years backlog. I mean, they're looking for more area. They came to us about a month ago. They want to build a new 2-story office building at the port.
Wow.
So I have to get someone assigned to do that. They're one of the big companies that has really taken off at the port. And the other one that's doing LNG related stuff is Bayou Pipe Coating. They have, you have to concrete coat the pipe. The flow line pipe, when you get in the marsh areas where all the pipeline, all the LNG plants are located, if you don't weight the pipe going into the plant, when the gas starts flowing, the pipe will come out the ground. It gets so light. And it'll come out the ground, so they have to weight it with concrete. So a big part of Bayou Pipe Coating's work for the next 3 to 5 years is concrete coating of pipe.
Wow.
Massive pipe, like 36 inch diameter, and they put in, I think it's like 6 inches of concrete, and it's wrapped around that. And it can only hold one joint of that per truck, sort of like risers. It's over 80,000 pounds per joint.
Wow.
So wherever you got to transport, you better have it on a barge to transport, one truck at a time. They have thousands of joints that are coated right now, laid out all over the Port of Iberia. If you do an aerial of the Port of Iberia, all you see is that green pipe, concrete coating. It's huge.
So all of that's, and any other new prospects you're working with?
We've got a couple. We have one out of Baton Rouge, a company that, in fact, we're very close to signing the lease, but they build big girders, concrete girders for overpasses and foundation piles.
Yeah.
In fact, the job that they're bidding on now, they don't have time. They're going to lease about 80 acres at the port. Right behind my office, we bought 40 acres from the Bernard estate, from Henry Bernard and them, and then we had 50 acres on the side of it, and our original plan was to dig a new slip down the middle of that 90 acres. Well, in walks this company and says, They looked at it, we showed them what we wanted to do with the canal. They said, no, we don't want that canal into it. We want the whole piece of property, but we just want a short version of the canal onto the property. We're gonna build a building over that slip at a cost of about a little over $60 million. They're gonna put gantry cranes in that building that's gonna load those big concrete girders and just set them on those barges.
Wow.
And just the Port of New Orleans new project in St. Bernard Parish, they have 3,600 pilings, foundation piles as they call it, that are 4 foot by 4 foot by 100 foot long, post tension with cables in between. They weigh 100,000 pounds per piling. They have 3,600 of them that they're gonna have to build and deliver to St. Bernard Parish for the new Port of New Orleans cargo port that they're building. And it'll take them 3 to 5 years to build, fabricate, and deliver the 3,600 pounds. That's one job.
Wow.
And they're gonna come to the port. All their competitors in Gulfport and Beaumont are on the water, and they're insisting they have to be on the water. They're currently between Baton Rouge and Gonzales on I-10, and they're gonna move their operation to the Port of Iberia. We're excited about that. That's diversification.
They rebuilding the Lake Charles Bridge.
They're going for that project as well, for foundation pilings for that. Yeah, that's right. That's gonna be a new bridge. That's a big project.
That's, what is it, $2.5 billion?
Oh, I don't know what the cost is. I went to the Port of Lake Charles and the Chenault Airport about a month ago to visit both of the facilities. I wanted to see what the Port of Lake Charles has got going on, just for the sake of comparison.
Yeah.
I'm good friends with the port director over there. Very nice guy. Ricky Self is his name, and he does an excellent job.
Yeah.
And because of the tonnage of the LNG that's shipping out of Calcasieu Parish now, they've been listed as one of the top 10 ports in the nation, tonnage-wise, for goods being shipped out because of that tonnage. But they have an amazing operation. They have a lot of warehouses, a lot of warehouse space, and they have a 35-foot channel. So you can go in there with a big vessel.
Yeah.
Those LNG boats got to go in there and leave with LNG. So you got to have the deep water. And their problem on disposal, ironically, Mr. Harold, no one who owns land along the Calcasieu River wants to give up their land for disposal.
Wow.
They can't get right-of-ways from anybody. They need to dredge deeper,
Yeah.
but none of the adjacent landowners want to do it. They think somebody's going to come, another LNG plant is going to come and offer them a ton of money for their property, so they don't want to use it for dredge material. So they have a dilemma. We were lucky in our dredging project in the Port of Iberia. The McElhenney Company, some of your good friends,
Right, yeah.
they gave us over 900 acres, let us use 900 acres of land to dispose of our dredge material on the segment that starts at the port up to the Intracoastal Waterway. So we used a lot of the McElhenney marsh, and we built them new land is what we did, because that's all good clay.
Yeah.
They were appreciative of that.
Because when you get below about 8 feet, then you're in high density clay,
Yeah.
which is not good for marsh building.
Well, we spread it out. We had a big footprint to spread it out. But they were nothing. It was turned into water. It was the option from their standpoint. And our environmental scientists from GIS engineering came in, and we met with the McElhenneys 3 or 4 times to assure them that from a marsh management standpoint, it's in their best interest to consider it. Because we had the Weeks family on the other side of the canal we could have done it with as well. But the McElhenneys worked with us at first offering, and we're finishing it up. We've got to do some little incidental stuff on their property, but it's all it's all for the good.
Yeah.
Couldn't help a better company.
Yeah. And we're looking at the waste heat recovery as a source of electricity.
Waste heat recovery?
Waste heat recovery at the LNGs. I mean, think about it. They get rid of that. They need to get rid of that heat.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they be boiling water and turning steam turbines?
Well, it's going to take somebody above my pay grade, Mr. Howell, to figure that one out with my simple
Well,
mind.
in
In theory, I hear what you're saying.
I got an engineering firm here in Lafayette looking at it.
Yeah? Good, good. I'd like to hear that.
They also looking at putting solar panels on the levees.
Somebody had told me that.
Yeah.
Somebody had told me that.
And then so that's it. If they can find a place to put solar panels, in our area, we produce power, and that's the cheapest power you got is solar panels. We produce power 2,400 hours a year.
I've been to UL's farm over here, and I've met with the director. Real interesting.
Yeah,
You know, there's a lot to learn from my standpoint, because a few people have come to the port and wanted them to put on some of the port rooftops.
yeah,
And, well, one building in particular, the one that McDermott built, that Seadrill is currently in, the roof is like, we have a 90-foot roof height on
Yeah,
that building. It's
yeah.
that building that McDermott built
yeah,
in the early 1970s. But we
Yeah.
have a lot of other buildings that have lower rooftops.
yeah,
We consider doing it. It's just a matter of somebody coming and, you know, bearing the cost of doing it, and
Yeah.
they just have to show us the math. Because you can't put it on the ground at the port. We have storm surges, as you well know.
oh, yeah.
So what I saw at UL wouldn't work in our application on any of our property. Now at our airport, we might be able to.
We had a professor from working on shell dredging, and he was giving a talk at the port of Iberia, and he was talking about removal of the Point of Fur Reef, how that changed the whole, you know.
I bet.
And he said before they dredged the reefs out, the channel capacity in that whole 32-mile reef was about the same as Southwest Pass.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know
Well,
that.
you couldn't get through it. You know, you only had one channel, and then they put a pipeline channel that, I mean, that it was well marked, and it gave us a route to take a boat from Intercoastal City to Grand Isle, which I had a job of doing it, you know. I was just coming out of the service, and Jimmy Parkinson had a camp at Grand Isle and with Oshner's, and he'd have me run the boat often by myself, and it was about an 18-hour trip.
Wow,
So,
that's a whole day.
but anyway, they put a pipeline through the Point of Fur Reef, and that was a way through the reef.
You had fuel to make that 18-hour trip?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they had two 651s,
Yeah.
and those were small diesels, and the boat went to 18 miles an hour with it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's cruising.
36-foot boat, yeah,
That's cruising.
yeah.
Well, 18-hour ride.
Yeah, but anyway, that was it. But then Shell Keys, which somewhere, you know, I mean, they were about 4 or 5 feet of water, 4 or 5 feet out of the water, and they had no vegetation on it, and this is where the pelicans reproduce, you know.
Where was Shell Keys at, Mr. Harrell?
It
What
was
was it?
about 4 miles from, and it was about 4 miles in a north-south direction, and it's the Shell Keys Wildlife Management Area, Federal Reserve,
Yeah,
because of the pelicans nesting there.
I'll be.
And the guys here, Barton was on the board of Dravo, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which had that under their control, were guests at Barton's 9,000-acre ranch near Clinton, Louisiana. And it was a deer hunting deal that somebody would pay $1,000 a day to go, you know, but these guys were there for free,
Yeah.
and they bragged about it, you know.
Oh.
So I said, wow. And we were fighting shell dredging, you know. I said,
Yeah.
that's going to be, they let them drive 500 feet on either side of and they could dredge to 40 foot deep. And, you know, as long as they had shells, 90% of the shells were below the mud line. And only 1% was above the water, and 9% above the mud line.
Yeah.
So these were solid.
Wow.
So anyway,
People didn't realize when it was going on. Now, I understand they have a lot of good projects planned for Marshall Island and the White Lake area, CPRA. There's some.
none of them are worth a shit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I heard there was a lot of money they were spending on them, Mr. Howell. I know nothing about the project.
Right.
Well, there's people tooting their horn saying good things are going to happen in Marshall Island and at White Lake. So you familiar with what they're proposing to do?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Well, we're gonna have to talk. Tell me what you know. I don't know. I don't have a dog in that hunt, but I'd sure like for you to explain it to me when you get time.
Well, the whole problem with the marshland is that it's all washing away because there's no sediment coming down the rivers anymore.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't have the flow because we had the latest charts when we took the strip coming down,
Uh-huh.
and we ran on sandbars that were not on the charts.
Wow.
Right now,
The bottom's coming up.
well, the Mississippi is getting small. It's the annual flow that determines the size of a river.
Yeah.
And the river is 20 times, the width of the river is 20 times its depth. So the Mississippi should be, what, 100 feet, and that means it should be 2,000 feet wide.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting a lot smaller.
Well, I know they're dredging on it all the time.
Oh, yeah, but
That's just maintenance dredging,
yeah.
trying to maintain the depth.
Well, they try to with training weirs, which we found one of them.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, right out of St. Louis, we coming down, and
How long of a ride was that, you said?
900 miles, 905 miles,
How long did it take y'all?
4 days.
4 days.
Yeah,
Wow. That wasn't boring, though. You
right.
saw
And the only thing you saw on the river was these big toes,
Yeah.
and you didn't see you didn't see anything on the river except the 3 or 4 towns, Memphis being one of them. There's 11 bridges, and the biggest distance between bridges is 270 miles. But anyway, it's real obvious that the river's getting smaller. And
You can see it.
should have been 50 feet, 50 to 100 feet deep, and it's 30, 35.
Wow.
And it's why right now the river I think at Simport is at 31. Flood stage is 47. Right next to it is Red River Landing, which is where they decide how much to divert into the Chevalier. It's 48 feet and it's at 54, so it's 6 feet above flood stage. And the river at Simsport is, I think it's at 31 and it's 48 feet. So that's part of, and during the flood of,
Yeah.
during the flood of 019, with all the gates wide open, they couldn't raise the river. The river was at 65 feet at Red River Landing, and it was at 41 at Simpson. So you have a hell of a change taking place there, and the best hydrologist in the world is trying to figure it out.
I got you.
The removal of that point of fur reef,
Yeah.
according to Dr. Ben Christensen, he's from Holland, and he was working at the University of Florida. He's one of the top hydrologists.
I remember that name.
Yeah. He was at the port, and he was at a news conference, and he was making a statement that the removal of that reef had storm surge implications for the Port of Iberia, as well as everything from the Calcasieu to the by La Force. And said it's going to raise the water levels 8 to 10 feet. And he says, one of the smart reporters asked, well, what does that mean for the port? He says, all those boats you have need to tie them down. Up on the lifts?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said,
Wow.
you need to tie them down. And he says, I would think that this building's going to be, and he put his head about 6 inches above the door, that's the water level you're going to have. And that's exactly what y'all had.
Yeah. The prediction was right.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, we do have a CPRA has commissioned to parish government that they are designing, the beginning of the process of designing a 250-foot wide barge gate on the commercial canal.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
know.
designing another one on the,
And you need to put a levee around it.
yeah, well, that's the starting point. If you don't have the gates, the
Yeah.
levee does you no good. So we're gonna do that, because all to the east of us, Lafourche, Terrebonne, St. Mary, they've done substantial things on levee building to try to protect against the storm surge and install a lot of pumps inside and out
Yeah,
to try to deal with those disasters. Because it'll happen, and if they do it all to the east, you know what the water do? It'll pressure up and go up even higher where we're at.
yeah, yeah.
We have, Vermilion and Iberia have done nothing to speak of.
Well, they planned to put a levee from Baldwin to, what is it, Palmetto Park,
Yeah,
$2 billion.
yep.
No, the levee works both ways.
Yeah, well, you gotta think like the devil, because you got water that gets inside. Just look at Plaquemine Parish's history. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
look what happens there. Once it gets inside, they wanna dynamite the levee. They can't get it out fast enough.
wow.
You know, it's happened over and over.
Yeah, we worked with the guys that were trying to put in they have what they call tube ships that, you know, right now it takes, I don't know, 2 days to unload I think those big canisters from, you know, that takes 2 days, and so you got a big bottleneck. But what they wanted to do was put in 40 feet of water off of Grand Isle.
Yeah,
They wanted to put a big port, and then they would use an aerial lift to bring up the Baton Rouge. And you know, the tube ships, one of them would be, they had to go around, and then another one could make it through the smaller one could make it through the panel.
okay. Some interesting things out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But they were interested in how you could use wind power
yeah,
to power up their operation.
well, I know Fouchon's trying to get them a little wind turbine up there as a demonstration project, working hand in hand with the people in New Orleans.
It's either 3 minutes or 7 minutes, depending on how they set it up.
Okay.
Let them go off in 3 minutes and keep going.
Well, I learned a little bit here, Harold.
Yeah.
You taught, every time I sit with you, I learn something.
They all do.
Well, to blame the oil companies, so, and the main thing they won in Plaquemine Parish, they won because of that one test. And it involved the failure to change the surface, you know, because they want to blame the canals.
Yeah,
But this is an area where the marsh failed, and they figured it was removal of liquids that just caused the water impervious clays to sink.
well, look at the sinkholes that happened a few years ago, you remember?
Oh, yeah.
When
that was
Ozell
just
was the head of it, and he ran out the meeting, or didn't go to the meeting, and You know, the sinkhole, Dow Chemical's been doing injection, downhole cavity filling for years, right there. So if you got a tie to somebody, nobody went after Dow Chemical, you know, and they're a big employer, one of the biggest employers in the state. But I guess it depends on who.
1 minute.
But
So we've learned a lot. Congratulations on your success.
well, we in it together, Harold. A lot of you people in Lafayette Parish has helped us get where we're at, and it's not going to stop. I mean, we're delivering for all of Acadiana. And thank you and everybody in Lafayette Parish for, and in Acadiana, because all the legislators in Acadiana have supported us. Because to get the money we got to dig our channel, that's what's turning the lights on at the Port of Iberia, that deep water channel. That's making things happen.
And I wouldn't have thought that at all.
Oh.
So, but that's why you're here.
We were a shallow ditch when I started.
Right.
But we're excited. We're going to be finished June 10th, and then we'll start working on the bypass, which will be finished by August on the
20
bypass.
seconds.
So thank you, Craig, for being here.
Thank
I've
you,
learned a
Mr.
lot,
Howell.
as you have learned.
Thank you. It's a good time, good chance to see you and the missus. I get to see
Yeah.
your wife, your lovely
Right.
wife, so that made my day.
If he keeps going, we'll go another 4 minutes. See what happens. I think y'all still on.
Yeah.
Well, I love the backdrop they have on us, Harold. I love that, you know. Be
It's
sitting
gonna
at,
go 3 minutes to 4 minutes.
be sitting at the levee at Turtles. Have y'all been on that alligator tour at, that airboat tour? Look at the alligators at Turtles? Oh, y'all need to go do, they have a guy over there that has those alligators doing everything but talking. He brings you in the middle of nowhere, starts tapping on what comes, and
Where is that?
on the levee in Henderson.
Oh, wow.
Y'all just call me, I'll set it up, I'll take care of it, I'll set it up. And you go when it's cool, they got covers over the airboats, they got like 10 passenger airboats, and you will enjoy it. You will say, thank you, and you can bring some of the kids.
Boy Scouts, huh?
Huh?
Isn't that the Boy Scouts that runs the,
No, this is Tucker Friedman that runs Turtles, it's a name of an,
Turtles.
yeah, Turtles. But Tucker Friedman, I'll set it up and you just tell me when y'all wanna go. Oh, it's a beautiful hour, go late in the afternoon, I'll let him pick the time, but.
I think we've got 3 minutes now. You're on overtime, okay?
Well, good, good. I get paid overtime. I like that.
You got something you want to talk about for another 3 minutes? It's still on the air. Okay?
How many places do you have there going on at the port?
Businesses,
Yeah.
we probably have 30 tenants,
Wow.
and some are small, some are big. And again, in the last 7 or 8 years, we picked up between Turner Industries, Cajun, Seadrill, Global Risers, E-Crane, Chart. That's 6 right there that, you know, we make a substantial amount of revenue. And the port has no tax base. We have no sales tax, we have no ad valorem tax to function. We operate strictly on lease revenue. Whatever revenue we generate from our leases, that's all we have to make things happen. We have to use that for match money with the state or the federal government, but we strictly operate on self-generated funds.
So you're at no cost to the taxpayer.
No cost to the taxpayer.
Right, yeah. Wow.
No, it's totally self-supporting, and again, we just, a little luck doesn't hurt in the overall scheme of things. You just got,
Y'all bought some land from Sarah.
we bought 5 or 6 pieces in the last couple of years. We bought some from Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
We bought from some of the Mosings at the Franks people.
This would have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, or before my time. Before my time. But
How long were you in the Senate?
16 years, from 1992 to 2008, the year that Bobby Jindal came into office. There were 19 of us in the Senate that were the first round of term limits kicked in. 19 out of 39, sayonara. That was it. That was it. But I enjoyed
Were
it.
you there when Ron Gomez was there?
Ron Gomez was working. No, Ron Gomez. I was parish president. Ron Gomez was secretary of the Department of Natural Resources under Buddy Roma.
Oh, yeah,
And I interacted a lot with Ron. He's a Lafayette guy, and he helped us a lot.
yeah.
He helped us a lot.
So you've been a part of Iberia Parish government for how long?
16 and 10 as parish president, 26, And where I'm at now, 10 years, so that's 36 years.
Wow.
Oh,
A real servant of the public.
well. And now my children go around, now that I'm out of politics, quote unquote, they say, oh, my dad has a real job now. I say, y'all listen to your mama too much.
For real.
10 seconds?
For real.
All right, thank you, Craig, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I really appreciate the invite. Always